Welcome to the Profitable Farmer Podcast, where it's all about increasing the profitability of your farm by working smarter, not harder.
G'day everyone, and welcome once again to Profitable Farmer. Jeremy here. Welcome to autumn. So in this podcast, I'm delighted to introduce Greg Johnson, who's the founder of Farm Owners Academy. I'm really looking forward to some time with Greg and perhaps sharing a bit more about his business journey and his background and what it was that inspired him to bring business coaching into agriculture. I think there's some really important backstory and some really important messaging in there. And just before I introduce Greg to you, I feel very privileged to now be part of the Farm Owners Academy team and working directly with Greg. In my yesteryear as a farm consultant, I got to hang out with quite a few advisors to the industry who had a depth and wealth of knowledge and experience in their field. And Greg is an absolute standout. His depth of experience, his wisdom, his entrepreneurial background, and how he turns up to help farming families achieve their potential and achieve at their best is second to none in Australia. So I think we're very lucky to have him with us today. And again, I feel very privileged to now be in business with Greg and part of the Farm Owners Academy journey. So Greg, thank you and welcome.
Thanks, Jeremy, and hello everybody, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. I think it's it's probably a bit overstated, but that's fine. I certainly have had many years involved in the farming industry, both as an active participant and as a consultant. So I guess that I do have a few runs on the board in that space, but that's just very nice of you.
Thanks, Greg. So just to kick us off, we hear it said that history repeats itself often, and I think it's very true in our industry, perhaps for better or for worse. I think, Greg, you grew up with a father who was incredibly entrepreneurial and a very successful businessman, and I can't help but feel like history is repeating itself in that what I see of you is a very successful entrepreneur and business person. How was it growing up as the son to a true Australian entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, it was interesting, Jeremy. I was there were six kids in my family. I was the fifth of six children, the youngest boy, and it's interesting when I reflect back on that process, because out of the six children in the family, 3 girls and 3 boys, I'm actually the only one that's gone on to become a business owner. Pretty well everybody else. My oldest brother was an engineer. He worked pretty well all of his life for other businesses, for companies, mining companies and so forth. My middle brother was Ian Johnson. Some of you might know. He was very actively involved in MLA for a long time. He was the acting CEO at one stage, but he headed up all the research at programs at MLA for quite a number of years. So he worked, had a long working environment with under other people or with other people. And my 3 sisters have all ended up in employed jobs. So it is a bit interesting to think about it, why it was that kind of I ended up taking the journey of being a business owner rather than an employee. And I think it probably came back to the fact that I was very heavily involved from a very early age in all of the activities that my father was involved with. His principal business that he developed over many years was a passenger coach service in South Australia initially, and then ended up being the first national passenger coach service in Australia. And I guess I started working after school in that business from the age of about 13. So I would basically go to the bus depot in Adelaide after school every day, every weekday, and work in the freight depot there, and then go home with him at night. And so I suppose I spent a lot more time with him in his businesses than my other brothers and sisters did. He also had a passion for farming land, and he purchased and owned quite a lot of farming land around the state of South Australia over his time. And I was also actively involved in working on those farms, whereas my older brothers and sisters probably were at a slightly different phase of his career development, and probably didn't spend quite as much time with him in his business environment. So maybe that was the critical thing for me, I think, is that I was kind of immersed in his world to a fair degree. And I guess probably by osmosis, the process of entrepreneurship and the mindset around business ownership and business management and so forth, I guess just grew out of that exposure and that time I spent with him in the pursuits that he was following.
I think about some of our clients, Greg, and so many have a mindset of being a technical operator. And I wonder, I feel like a lot of us might have missed that history repeating itself as it has for you, where we might all have grown up under technical operators. What do you think it is that you've learned most having an entrepreneurial mentor in your father, perhaps, rather than what for many might be sort of growing up under a technician?
Yeah, I think that the really salient lessons for me are that, if you have an idea that's worth pursuing, then take the time to really analyse that idea, to really sit down and do the due diligence on whether or not the idea has the potential to be turned into a business. And if you do the due diligence and it looks like there's potential there, and generally what you're looking to do is you're looking to fill a need. Most businesses actually fill a need somewhere. There's you have to have there has to be an audience of people generally who require what it is that you're offering as a business. And so you're identifying a need, clearly identifying that need, you're filling that need, and then when you actually finally make the jump into having creating a business around that need or that service offering, then be very, very careful on watching the numbers, making sure that the numbers matter. The numbers are telling you that what's going on in the business. It's such an important thing that with all businesses, that you have to know what's going on in the business at any particular time, particularly with a startup business. And personally, I classify a startup business as a business that still relies on the owner's labour to run. So the definition of a true business is a profitable company that can run without the owners. So if any business that still requires the owner's input to run on a day-to-day basis, to me, is still a startup business. And whilst any businesses in startup in particular, the numbers really matter, because they will tell you exactly what's going on in the business. They'll also lead you to, or point you to, or get you thinking about the things you might have to do or need to do to actually turn that business into the sort of business that you're wanting to generate down the track. If you don't have visibility on that, then the likely scenario is that you may well just flounder away many, many years and actually not end up with the sort of business you're wanting to create.
Greg, do you think commodity producers miss that important piece strategically in the defining or the not defining the gap or the niche that they play in?
Oh, look, I think it's critical. I just can't see really how you can run a successful business or expect to run a successful business without having a very clear understanding of what it is that you're wanting to produce. What's the need that you are wanting to satisfy? So as commodity producers, obviously, there's a market for every commodity. The price might not be what you want to make a profit, but basically, as a farmer, you can produce anything and you can sell it, because agriculture has very mature markets for pretty well every product that's produced. The point is, though, are the commodities that you're producing, firstly, the best fit for what for your passion? What it is that you're passionate about in farming. Secondly, does it fit the landscape that you farm? The climate and the land that you actually own. Is it the best fit for that country? And then thirdly, can you run that enterprise or fill that or produce that commodity in a way that actually produces enough income for you to make enough profit to make the business a worthwhile exercise. So they're the three the important things. And I think that for a lot of us, we don't actually have that consideration. We don't think deeply enough about what it is that we should be doing with our farming land to really, come to that intersection of what we're passionate about, what we can be very good at, and what really gives us, great financial return.
Greg, what you're touching on, and just for our listeners, there's a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins, and he's an amazing researcher in this and has written a book called Good to Great, which goes into a lot of depth. So if this is on point for you, that book would be a go-to from my perspective, and I'm sure for yours as well, Greg. If you reflect back on your father as an entrepreneur and getting ideas through to, viable, sustainable businesses, would you mind just giving a bit more background on him, what he achieved, and perhaps how he discovered gaps in markets and uncovered those in order to launch successful companies?
Yeah, I guess not unlike a lot of people of his age. My father was born in 1927. He was in a family of 9, and he left school at 14 to go out and work to start to help support the family. So he had a limited education. Just finished basically year 7, and then left school. So went out initially with a charcoal burner up in the Mallee in South Australia, up at Morgan, and was involved in a charcoal manufacturing business up there, and so he was stacking the charcoal pits. That was his first job, and then this is, I think, this is the really key thing. It's the mindset of the entrepreneur. He wasn't, when he was working away, stacking the charcoal pits and unloading the charcoal pits and so forth. He was also looking at, okay, well, what would I need to do to actually, get further with this particular job? And what he understood is that the axemen, the guys who actually cut the wood, were making a lot more money than the people who were stacking the pits. So he thought, well, bugger this, I'm not going to stay stacking the pits forever. I'm going to go out and start swinging an axe. So that's what he did. He stepped up and he got out of the pits and he went swinging an axe for a period of time and was actually very good at it. His daily tonnage rates was amazing. And for anyone who sort of knows the charcoal industry up that area, you're cutting down mallee, and mallee's not that easy to chop. It's pretty hard. And it's it's pretty hot country. So it was a pretty was a difficult job, but certainly there was reasonable money to be made in those days because of the demand for charcoal in industry and so forth. But then one of the things he noticed also while he was in that job is that once the charcoal was produced and it was bagged up, it was then loaded onto old trucks and it was driven down to Adelaide for sale. And he thought, well, maybe I think there's a better opportunity here if I actually look at the truck side of things, and maybe I'll buy a truck and I'll actually start carting the charcoal and firewood rather than swing an axe. So that was his next step, was to basically buy an old truck and started running charcoal and firewood back to Adelaide instead of actually swinging the axe. And then the next thing that sort of led to that is that he thought by that stage he'd married and he started having a family, and sort of living up the Mallee wasn't all that easy. So he decided to move into Adelaide and started driving passenger coaches just for a local company there. And as at the same time, he put himself through an accountancy training. So he went through some basic financial training that he put himself through. And then it just so happened after a year or so of driving buses for this particular company, there was an issue at the top with the CEO. Wasn't doing a very good job. The owners decided to off the CEO and basically asked him whether he'd like to step in. Now, he'd never run a business before. He'd never even had that inkling. But he obviously had the inkling because he put himself through this accountancy or this finance training that he'd done. So he stepped in, and it kind of all went from there. So from there, he had a number of different opportunities to get involved in various bus services. Purchased Murray Valley coaches and a number of different businesses as things grew. But eventually ended up with Bird's Eyes Motor Company, which he formed into Stateliner, which was a South Australian-based bus coach business, and then not being satisfied with that, really, I guess his longer term horizon was to turn that passenger coach business into a national coach service, which Australia didn't have at that point of time. And so over a period of years and with negotiations, ended up forming Greyhound Australia, so which became the first national coach line in Australia. So really quite an amazing story when you actually sit down and look at it from extremely humble beginnings to really what was a very prominent and national business servicing people's transport requirements, which is a very defined need. At that stage, airline travel was pretty expensive, and bus and cars weren't that reliable, and so long distance passenger coach services were quite in demand. Not quite the same these days, but certainly that was the niche and the opportunity in those days.
What do you most admire about your father, Greg?
I think the thing from a business perspective, the thing that really stands out for me is that he was never satisfied with his current position. He was always thinking about how he could do better, looking at what the next opportunity was, what was the opportunity in his current space to do a better job? What was it to expand? Was it to bring in similar businesses or similar opportunities that actually supported his core business? Where the opportunities lie. So in other words, never happy with the current reality, always looking to improve. And and at the same time, and this is the thing I really learned from him at an early age, bringing in people that could support him in his goals. Bringing in people with talent, people with skills that had more knowledge than he had in particular areas. He's had lifetime friends and associates who are lawyers and accountants and so forth who've supported him through his journey. So it's bringing in those people, surrounding yourself with those people who are smarter than you in the areas that you really need to bring in for your business to help you to create the sort of business environment that you need and help you support really good quality decision making.
Thank you. In the last podcast that I did with Aaron Hutchin, episode 70, we talked about intergenerational transition. How did succession play out in your business family, Greg?
Well, it was actually pretty interesting because none of us actually ended up, none of the family members ended up ever showing much interest in taking on the passenger coach business. So we were actually more, I guess, to some degree, rurally oriented. We got a bit more tuned into the farming side of his pursuits. I ended up training to be a vet and wanted to be a rural vet. My middle brother, as I said, worked for the MLA, so he did a rural science degree and then a PhD in rural science a PhD at Reading University in England, and then came back and worked for the MLA for many, many years. And actually after that went and was the CEO at the PIRDC, the Pig Industry Research Development Council as well. So, and then for a number of years sat on the sugar board. So he's had a lot of involvement. Well, his whole life's basically been in agriculture. My older sister was involved, did an ag science degree. So we kind of gravitated more towards the rural side of his portfolio, if you like, rather than the bus side. I worked in the buses, as I say, as a labourer for quite a few years when I was a teenager, but I didn't really ever have a passion for that particular business. So and there was never any expectation that was going to happen for us either. So when the time was right for my father, he decided to put the business up for sale and basically sold it, and then used that money to go on to other pursuits. One of which was a sheep dairy. I was in business with him with a sheep dairy. We started on Kangaroo Island back in 1990. In 1990, Island Pure Sheep Dairy. It was the first sheep dairy in South Australia, and it ran for about 25 years. We sold it. The business was sold after about 20 years to a new owner, and unfortunately, that new owner chose not to take advice that they were given around, or the opportunities for advice that they were given around the management of the livestock and the running of the dairy, and turned a a business that was basically a $1.5 million turnover business into bankruptcy within 5 years. So just a great illustration of really how important management skill is in any business, the success of any business. It doesn't matter how long the business has been running for or how successful it's been. The current managers need to understand the business and be able to manage it and run it in a way that will keep it successful. Otherwise, businesses fail. And we've seen that time and time again. Balfour's in Adelaide, 90 years old business, in the hands of a younger generation, all of a sudden in the hands of a receiver because of poor management. So, and nothing to do with the products that are being produced, the prices, all around the business management.
I think it was Dale Carnegie, wasn't it, that said that in his lifetime of research that the capability of the leader in management is the number one determinant of the success of a small business.
There's no doubt about that. I think it's not just small business, it's also large business as well. When you look at a lot of public companies, when they have the wrong CEO in place, often their fortunes can fluctuate, can take a downturn. So, so a lot of savvy investors will actually invest on the basis of who's the CEO. What's the quality of the CEO. So it is a really important feature of all business, not just small business.
Which prompts me to ask the question of our listeners: how much have you invested in your own development in the last 24 months?
In the last 24 months?
Like just in the last 2 years, as an example. Like, we all invest so much money in bright and shiny gear and in the best genetics and, in so many things that help us grow out our farms. But if the number one thing that determines the success of our business is our ability to lead and manage and make good business decisions, how much have you invested recently in your own development? I find, Greg, that most small business owners and most farm business owners are just not investing nearly enough in their own development as individuals and as entrepreneurs. What would your comment be around that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, Jeremy. I mean, let me make a point here. I think running a business is probably one of the hardest things you can possibly do. It's a tough gig. If you don't want significant challenges in your life, then go and work for somebody else. Business has a really interesting way of throwing up all sorts of challenges that you don't get when you're an employee. Having said that, though, business is a game. I treat business as a game. I love the game. I can't imagine not being a business owner. When I left university, I didn't even think about going and working for somebody else. I couldn't do that. I had to own my own business. I had to make my own mistakes. I had to have control of my destiny. But with that comes the responsibility that you have to be able to get yourself into a position where you can lead people, where you can understand what's required to run successful businesses, where you can negotiate with the people the main people that you need to negotiate with to keep your business successful. There's a whole heap of skills that you need to develop to be a successful business owner, and those skills are all there. Nobody is born a business owner, a successful business owner or an entrepreneur. We learn those skills, and anybody can learn them, but you just have to be open to investing time and effort and money into that self-development. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. And so, a lot of people who say, I have trouble finding staff or people for my team and keeping people in my team. That's a skill. It's a set of skills. And it's really interesting when you look across the landscape, doesn't matter whether it's the agricultural landscape or any other business landscapes, you'll find people in the same businesses or similar businesses, similar areas, that have no problems attracting team members to their teams and keeping them. And just down the road, you have somebody else who's really struggling and is and is always saying that they just can't get people to come. So the issue is not around the location, which a lot of people blame their location. It's not around the location. It's not around really. It's mostly to do with who you are as a leader and what you're offering, what you bring to the table as far as your leadership and how attractive you make your business to people who you might want to come and work for you. So that's just one of the skill sets you need to be a successful business owner. But it comes from self-development, and gosh, I don't think I could even, count up the number of hours I spent reading books and investing in courses and online and direct courses on self-improvement over the years. It's probably hundreds of thousands of dollars and many, many, many hours. And I'm still learning now because, it's really, you never stop as a business owner. There's always new things to learn. There's always more that you can add to your armory and portfolio. And that's the thing one of the things I guess my father taught me. I mean, he's now still alive. He's 95, just turned 95. And I mean, he sold out of the bus business when he was in his late 50s. He then went farming. I actually partnered with him in one of his farms, and we were in partnership for a while in that farm. We then went into partnership with a sheep dairy. He taught himself to become a very successful share investor when he was about in his 70s. So, so really, I guess the lesson for me there is that you never stop, or when you give up or when you stop is when it's time to actually retire, and probably that's when things are going to go backwards. But, you can keep yourself challenged, you can keep yourself moving forward, just as Colonel Sanders did with KFC. I think he was 65 or something like that when he sort of cracked the nut on the KFC franchise, and the same with Ray Kroc with McDonald's. He was 59 when he identified the opportunity with McDonald's and moved that out into franchise. So, often I think your really best years in business come in your mid-late 50s and into your 60s, because you've had that experience, you've had that grounding, you've got that all that wisdom behind you that you can use to really do a good job with the business you get involved in at that point in time.
So, Greg, if we arrive to 6 or 7 years ago, I think you were involved in an entrepreneurial training masterclass in the vet sector. And it was from that I guess you might have touched on or been exposed to this concept of business coaching, being effective and successful in supporting entrepreneurship in other industries. What was it that I guess gave you the idea or the inspiration or the determination, if you like, to set down to bring business coaching into agriculture?
Yes, it's an interesting one, Jeremy. It's just amazing how things happen. But we've been running, my wife and myself have been running this vet clinic. We set up a vet clinic on Kangaroo Island when we first shifted here just after graduation from university. And we've been running that clinic for about 30 years. And at that stage, I think we had about 5 people involved. There was myself and Deb. There was 2 nurses and a part-timer, I think. Oh, no, sorry. There was myself and Deb and another vet and 2 nurses. That was the 5 people in the business. And you're right. I went away to a boot camp in Queensland, which was for vets. And I met a guy there called Andrew Roberts, who is one of Australia's leading business coaches. Had worked with a lot of businesses with a great deal of success. And he was talking a lot about the things that are needed to run really successful businesses. And it kind of tweaked my interest a bit. And they were running, they decided, or Andrew and the fellow who was working with at the time decided to run a 1-year mastermind course, training mastermind course for vets. Well, actually, it wasn't just for vets. There was other businesses in it as well. So it was pitched at vets, but also anybody else who wanted to be in the mastermind. And so we signed up for that. It was a pretty expensive exercise, and we at the time, it was a lot of money for us. We had dependent children, so there was a lot of money was going out into children's education and so forth. But I just felt that it was an opportunity that we needed to take. So we enrolled in that and spent the 12 months basically learning from Andrew and the other people in the room about their experiences in business and what they were doing that we may or may not have been doing or that we could have done better. And they also acted as a sounding board for the issues that we were having and to help us to, I guess, brainstorm some of the solutions that we might have had for issues that we were facing as business owners. And I guess during in time with that, in that mastermind, it occurred to me, well, it became very obvious to me that the farming space lacked really business coaching. I'd been consulting to the farming sector for pretty well all of the 30 years that I've been the veterinary practice here. One of the reasons we moved to Kangaroo Island is because it has the highest sheep density per head of population anywhere in Australia, and we wanted to be involved in the rural industries. We believe that we had some things to offer. We did some special training while we were at university around consulting in cattle and sheep enterprises. So we believe we had some things we could offer, and we set about implementing and delivering those sorts of trainings and that involvement to the Kangaroo Island farming space when we first moved over here. But that training that we received and the consulting we were doing was pretty well technical. It was all about production. How do you improve production on farm? And it wasn't much about the business side of it. And it became obvious to me over that sort of time of consulting that there's far more to business. In fact, there's far more important things to business, running a successful business, than the technical side of the operation. You can be the best technical farmer in the world, but if you're not savvy in business, then you'll never run a business that has good profitability and that necessarily satisfies where you want to go from a financial perspective. But what I did notice in my time with the people I was working with as a consultant is that the really high performing farms all had really good handle on their business. They knew their numbers. They kept very good track of what the business was doing from a financial perspective. They also spent a lot of time on their own self-development, so their own training. And so, but there were still some areas that they were struggling with, things like employing and, leadership and team management and those sorts of things. So over the course of this time with Andrew, it became very apparent to me that these same skill sets needed to be delivered to the farming industry in Australia, and in fact were far more important to success in farming than the actual technical part of the business. Most farmers in Australia have good technical expertise. What they lack, though, is an understanding of their business and the way to run their business well. Because when you have that understanding and you really are running the business, or you're doing the things you need to have good visibility on the business, it will naturally lead you to be asking questions around what you need to do from a technical perspective to actually take the business forward. So that really precedes the increase in technical knowledge.
There's so much research and so much R&D and training, Greg, around the technical part of farming, and I think it's wonderful that over the last 7 years that you have pioneered this entrepreneurial and business training that complements that. I've been a business coach in regional Australia now for 12 years, mentoring small and emerging companies regionally. And, to hammer the point home that you've just made, there are 120 plumbers in Wagga, which is where I used to be based. And I don't care as a client how good any of them are at plumbing, but really, because it's an expected skill. Of course, they're all good at plumbing, but of the 120 plumbers in Wagga, there's probably only 4 that are shooting the lights out. And it's not because they're better plumbers than the others. It's just that they've got a better business leadership and better ability to truly act as the CEO to their company. And it's a crude example, but for farmers, it's the same. It's not about what you do. It's about how well you do it. And so maybe that we've probably all sharpened the axe enough that we're competent enough in the technical. Now it might be about really turning our mind to how we can grow as leaders in the business space. I really appreciate your comments around that, Greg. Just as we track on this, that mastermind program that you were part of that was there, you invested in that to support the growth of your vet practice. What impact did that have on the success of that company over that time?
Yeah, it was astronomical, really. We thought we were going okay, and we were going okay as a business. As I say, we've been running for about 30 years. We started it from scratch. Deborah and myself, my wife and myself, started the vet business from scratch. And so, as I say, at that stage we had 5 people fully involved in the business. We were turning over about $800,000 a year, I suppose, and the profit was okay. It was comparable with other vet practices around the country, but I just knew there was there was other opportunities that we weren't tapping into. I didn't know what it was at that point in time, but I was sure there was something else that we could have been doing to help our service offering in our area. And just remember that, I'm on Kangaroo Island. Kangaroo Island's 4,500 people total. So we're geographically constrained. The business can't expand geographically beyond the borders of Kangaroo Island. So we've got a population that, our business has to be supported by that population. And so, unlike a lot of other businesses that can just expand their reach, we really couldn't expand our reach. So, and really, in the process of that 12 months of the mastermind, an opportunity or an idea unfolded to me to actually change our model, change the business model, and we significantly changed the way we went about our business, not from the point of view of the technical veterinary side, but we added some other elements to the business that actually significantly accelerated the growth of the business. And to the stage where last year, so this is 7 years later, we turned over $4.5 million, and there's now 15 people in the business. I don't actually work in the business at all. Don't spend any time in the business at all. Deb now spends about maybe 3 to 4 months of the year in the business, and only she just does foot rot control work, which is something she loves. She loves to be out on the farm, working with farmers and their sheep. So she's an absolute Australian gun at foot rot control. She's got a foot rot eradication program or process that is second to none. And so she works with farmers now to help in the foot rot eradication programs. And that's what she does. That's what she wants to do. So we've been able to set the business up so that she can just now immerse herself in the things she wants to do. I don't, as I say, work in the business at all anymore. Haven't for quite a number of years. And the whole business is now run by a team. So, absolutely amazing change. And I was heavily involved in annual benchmarking of my veterinary practice, along with about 350 other vet practices across Australia. So I knew how we were going compared to the broader industry. And I mean, our growth was, we were averaging about 80% annualized growth, compound growth, which is pretty sensational when the average for the industry was about 3%. So really, that one or that 12 months of training and really getting my head in a very different space, and really thinking about clearly about what it is that the opportunities that could present themselves for the business, and then doing the due diligence and enacting them, just made just an incredible difference in that space. And at the same time, I launched a couple of other businesses as well, and they've gone on to be very successful businesses also.
So just to that point, Greg, Richard Branson once said that once you learn how to run one business well, there's no reason why you can't run multiple successful businesses concurrently. I look at what I understand that you do now. It's far more than that vet practice, and it's far more than a directorship here at Farm Owners Academy. And what's your comment about that? Once you learn these entrepreneurial skills, what's possible by way of, diversification in the business space?
There's absolutely no doubt about it, Jeremy, that as I said before, business is a game. And so if you know the rules, you're more likely to be successful at the game. And so I think that, really the art of entrepreneurship is learning the rules of business. And once you learn those rules, then you can apply them to whatever it is that you want to apply them to. And so you're absolutely right. I'm involved still in a number of businesses now, and I think apart from one business which is still in startup phase, all of the others are now turning over at least $1 million a year or more. So they've gone on, which to me is the class. $1 million turnover is when a business starts to become, I think, a reasonable business. We're moving away from almost a hobby to actually a serious business once you start getting to that level of annual turnover. And so, we've now got, I'm now involved intimately in, a number of businesses with that sort of level of turnover and reasonable profitability associated with it as well. So, and it really is just by applying the rules. And can I say that all of these businesses were startups? No, we didn't purchase any of them. They're all startups. And startups, the success rate of startups is not high. Most startups fail within the first 5 years. And And over 10 years, very, very few of them go on with it to succeed. So, but these businesses, have moved through the startup phase now, and they're certainly moving into much more mature. We've got teams in all those businesses now that are taking on a lot of the activity, and part of the process of developing those businesses is to work out how the owners are going to remove themselves from a lot of the activity and just work in the areas of the business that they provide the most value and that they would enjoy working in. So that's part of the process always with all the businesses that we get involved with. But you're absolutely right. It's not hard to run multiple businesses once you know how to run one. It's just a question of rinsing and repeating and playing by the rules.
Greg, we started this conversation talking about how entrepreneurs find gaps in industries and then create successful and sustainable businesses around them. What's the gap or what's missing in agriculture or in the industry, in your opinion, that business coaching is here to resolve?
Well, I think that from the first perspective, as I said before, pretty well anything you want to produce as a farmer, there's a market for. So once you get pretty clear on the commodities that you're going to produce and what you're actually turning off of the farm, then it comes back to running the most efficient business that you possibly can. And what I was seeing over and over again in the farming space is that there was just so many aspects of good business management that just were being poorly done, or that there just wasn't great knowledge of within the farm ownership sector. And so, for example, things like poor financial literacy, not really understanding how to produce and use a cash flow statement and a cash flow forecast to really produce more certainty in your business going forward. How to produce a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet that you can use to really understand where the business is at, where it's come from, and where it's going, and help you make really good, sound financial decisions. I mean, they are critical pieces of information that anybody in business, in any other walk of life, and that owns a business outside of farming, really probably recognises the need for, and a lot of people do actually are quite skillful at those outside of farming. But in the farming space, a lot of farmers just don't have much idea of how to generate those, let alone how to use them. And really, if you don't have financial insight into your business that's current, then it's really a bit like driving a car with a blindfold on. And let's think about that. If you were to drive down the road in a car with a blindfold on, you'd pretty soon get arrested, or you'd have a pretty big accident. But in business, we can do it. We can go on running a farming business for years with a blindfold on, and nobody cares. So it really is such an important part of it. Things like planning. I mean, there's such an important role of strategic planning in actually developing or achieving the long-term goals that you want for your business. And if I step back even one more than that, I think a lot of people who are farm business owners don't even have a really clear understanding of what they're trying to achieve. What is it they're trying to get to in 10, 15, 20 years' time? What does the business look like? What does their life look like? The clearer you can get around that longer-term vision, the more chance you've got of being able to put strategies in place today and over the next few years that are going to help drive the business towards the direction of the delivery of that vision. And so getting clear on that vision and then coming back to a really clear strategic planning process that actually makes sure that you schedule the things that you need to do to drive the business towards and your life towards those goals to make it happen. You have a much higher chance of success if you do that than just winging it, because often what I see in farming and sometimes in other businesses as well is that people just go and work and they get involved in the day-to-day business, and before you know it, 5 years has gone past, 10 years has gone past, and really they haven't actually moved their business or their life any closer to what their long-term goals are, if they have them at all. And part of that, is being involved with this technical focus all the time. And yes, you have to be able to run the technical aspects of a farm, but you don't have to be the best technical farmer in the world to run the best farming business. It's very important that you remember that. So it's easy, and most of us come to farming and come to other businesses through a technical background, but we really need to be sure, make sure that if we come from a technical background, then we need to spend lots of time upskilling in the business side of running a successful business.
Greg, just before you sort of expand on that a little, out of 100 farms that you might work with, how many would you say would have financial literacy at the level required? And how many do you think out of 100 would have a robust strategic plan that is practical and actionable?
So I think that the number of people who have a good enough understanding of the financial aspects of a farming business is probably about 5%. And that's just not only on my own experience, it's also based on some by hand surveys that I've done of people that we've delivered training to over the last few years in Farm Owners Academy. I've every one of our events, I always ask people, what they're doing is in the space of profit and loss and balance sheets and cash flow statements. And it's really quite astounding how few people have any sort of activity in this area at all. So it's very, very sad and really quite an indictment on the industry. I think we don't have highly skilled people. When you go to have a meeting with your accountant about your business, you need to know more about your business from a financial perspective than what your accountant does. Because if you don't, then you can't have a decent conversation with him or her about what it is that you're doing in your business. And what often I see is that the owner of the business then starts to rely on the accountant for advice around the day-to-day financial management of the business. And can I say this to you, that accountants are very, very good at what they're trained to do. They're good at producing tax returns. They're good at running an accountancy business, but they're not farmers, and they're not good at running farming businesses. And so that's your job. And so you've got to be skillful in that area. And as far as the strategic planning goes, I think it's probably less than the financial part of it. So few farmers that we've come across in my time consulting, and then also in Farm Owners Academy, have a really clear vision for the future that they can work to. And if you don't have a clear vision for the future, then I don't know how you can put any sort of strategic or strategies in place to get you there, because you actually don't know where you're going. So that's I think that would be the way I would see it, Jeremy.
They're pretty alarming numbers, aren't they? And so worthwhile listeners just reflecting on, how do you rate yourself on financial literacy, and how do you rate yourself on the ability to lead the process of strategic planning around your farm business? It's such important points, and they're learned skills, Greg, to your point. What other gaps do you see in the industry that business coaching's here to resolve?
I think one of the biggest ones that I see is that there's no accountability. Being a farm business owner is a lonely and isolated activity. Actually, being a business owner full stop is a pretty lonely and isolated activity. Because of the nature of business ownership, you live in a space where you are a bit removed from. Even if you've got a large team around you, your relationships with that team have to be at a level that is not the same level as it would be as if you were mates down the pub, for example. So it is a bit isolating, and it is a little bit lonely to some degree. But in the farming space, it's even worse because you have the geographical isolation as well. But the bottom line is that because most farm business owners are also self-employed, there's nobody to hold them accountable. So it doesn't matter whether you implement activities or strategies or not, because nobody's there to actually hold a light up or a mirror up to you and say, well, have you done what you said you were going to do? So I think lack of accountability is a massive problem in all business ownership, but it's certainly a significant problem in farm business ownership. I think implementation is an issue. I do know that the most successful farming business owners that I've met in my journey are very good implementers. They will see something that they believe is an opportunity for them, that could be an opportunity for them. They'll work out how they can incorporate it into their business, and then they'll implement. And it's in that process of implementation that they discover, firstly, whether or not what they're looking to bring in is actually going to complement the current business or not. They also challenge themselves to learn new skills as part of that implementation process. So what I generally find is that the people who are successful in business are great implementers. They don't procrastinate. They get in, they once they make a decision, they get in and implement, and then they look for the results, monitor the results, and then work out whether it's something that's worth persisting with or not. So I think that's important. Lack of business governance is another one. Really, I think people don't have a really great understanding of the governance that's required to run a successful business and lead a team, and all of the things that surround governance. So there's a whole range of really important skills that determine the success of any business, that quite apart from how the business makes its money, which is the technical part, that really need to be addressed and mastered for any successful business to really, or for any business to have a chance of being a highly successful business, I think.
And so, Greg, I guess it's with those concerns in mind that I predict, I guess, that inspired you and Robbo to come together to launch Farm Owners Academy. Do you mind speaking to why it was that you undertook to establish this project, and maybe just touch on why, I guess, why it's now the mastermind construct that you had the experience of applied to farming families?
Yeah, I think it's really important, Jeremy, that I go back to sort of what was our driving passion 30 years ago, or 38 years ago, actually, when we graduated from university. As I said, Deb and I, we both went through the veterinary training at Murdoch University in Western Australia, and made a decision while we were there that we were going to shift to Kangaroo Island, and we were going to set up a veterinary practice here. But principally, we were going to be involved in consulting to the farming industries in any way that we could. The vet practice was a vehicle for us to be able to make enough money to live on, so that we could pay for our opportunity to be involved in consulting in the farming space. And so it was always our passion to do whatever we could to improve the lot of the farming businesses that we dealt with, and in whatever form that took, because we knew that. And my wife Deb's from a farming background as well. She was brought up on a property just not far out of Keith in South Australia, a merino stud property there, and we both knew that that living in a rural community it's a fantastic place to live, fantastic place to bring up kids when things are going well. So when the economy's going well in those areas, they're brilliant places to be. From a lifestyle perspective, they just offer pretty well everything that you need to for most people in their lives. But when they're not going well, when there's not enough money around, in particular, they can be pretty horrible places to be, and there's a lot of suffering in those areas because of that situation, whether that's coming from drought or poor prices or just issues with the way the profitability of the farms in general. So that really our driving passion was really to do what we could in whatever way possible to improve the profitability of the farms in the area that we lived in, to create a better community that we lived in, a more vibrant community that we lived in, and also if we could, to extend that our reach as far as possible to affect as many people in our broader community as well. So that's really been the driving passion. Now, Farm Owners Academy, I guess, came out of that. It took a long time getting there, but we got there, and certainly I couldn't have believed that Farm Owners Academy in its current form would be the outcome of 38 years of drive, I suppose, and passion towards that goal. But you don't have to know how you're going to get to the goal. You should have a clearly defined goal, as I talked about before, and you keep at it, you keep persisting, then it's quite incredible the sort of things that come to play that help you to I guess bring that goal into reality. So, and that's really what's happened with Farm Owners Academy for us.
There was a wonderful moment, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, Greg, where at our last client deep dive, we had 300 farming families or 300 farmers in a room in Adelaide, and every morning we get the team together for a huddle before the event starts. And there was a wonderful moment where Deb shed a tear and was quite emotional around the fact that her dream, or your collective dream of 38 years ago, had been realised. And it was just a wonderful moment to sit and see you both, proud of the fact that we'd brought a team together and a community together that was achieving the vision that you both set down so long ago. How does it feel when a vision arrives some 38 years later in a way perhaps that you couldn't have imagined?
Oh, look, it's incredibly satisfying. I think that's one of the things that I find the most thrilling about business and business ownership is that it provides a set of challenges and possible rewards that you'll never get as an employee. It's absolutely amazing how you just invest so much time, effort, energy, and money into any business that when you get down the track and it starts to fulfill the longer term visions you have for that business and the way to fix your life, I mean, it's impossible not to feel pride, incredible satisfaction and immense pride around that. It's no different to, I guess, to your family. You spend so much time, effort, energy, and money investing into your children, and when they finally grow up and get out of your hands, and you can watch them walk off into the wider community and lead the lives they're going to leave. There's often a massive sense of satisfaction and pride associated with that. And I think it's the same thing. It's there's no difference. And so there's no doubt that for me and Deb, we've been blessed in that we've been able to get to our vision and really achieve what it is we wanted to achieve. And if nothing further happens with the business, I'll be very satisfied. But it's the thrill for us comes from listening to the stories of the people that we've been involved with now, hearing how things have changed in their lives and their businesses, and all the positive things that are going on for them. That's really the thing that drives us forward all the time. It's Deb and I don't need to work anymore. We're in the fortunate position we could retire tomorrow and never have to work again. But we work, we spend the time. And I still spend a lot of hours on all the businesses that I deal with because I love doing it, not because it's not for monetary gain. It's just I love the challenges and I love the rewards that come from seeing the need that you've identified being filled and the goal coming to fruition. That really is the driving passions for sure.
Thank you, Greg. I mean, it's consistent for Jane and I. I'm going to say 20 years ago, Jane and I set down a vision of making a difference of significance in the lives of many thousands of regional families and farming families. And I couldn't have predicted that I'd stumble upon a conversation with Robbo 2 years ago and all of a sudden find myself part of a project that is achieving exactly that. So I do, like you, really love that construct of setting down compelling visions. I think we call them big, hairy, audacious goals, and not having any idea how they are going to turn up in your life. And if you stay in motion and stay with intent toward their attainment, that at some point when you're ready, they do arrive and they do kind of manifest and become a reality. So I want to say thank you to you and Deb for having the vision that you did and for sticking at it like you have, because it's allowing a whole lot of others in our team and in our community to achieve their visions as well.
Thank you. Yes, it is quite incredible what turns up. When you've got that compelling vision, things that you would never imagine just turn up. It's quite incredible.
Yeah. Yep. Greg, I'd love for you, if you could, just to give your spin on what Farm Owners Academy is here to achieve and why it was that you created it. I mean, you've touched on it. We've talked about the problem that exists in the industry about lack of good governance and those things, but what is it that you've created Farm Owners Academy to achieve? And if you could, I'd love for you to speak to the Take Control program in particular as the precursor program to our mastermind, just to kind of set, I guess, the context for why you set that up as a lead-up program to the broader mastermind program.
Yeah, so look, the Farmers Academy model, if you like, or process was really set up to help farming business owners to become proficient in all of the areas of business management that we believe are critical. And it really takes people right through all aspects of running a successful farming business. Now, we don't spend any time on the technical aspects because everybody makes their money in farming in a different way. And really that's, the technical aspects are the technical aspects, but the business aspects, managing a farming business is common to every farming business and pretty well every other business as well. So there's so much that can be learned in that space that can really completely change the fortunes of a farming business. The owners, once the owners start to understand what's required to run and own a highly successful farming business, then, as I said before, what happens in the paddock will start to change as well, because the right questions start to be asked of the owner and of the leadership team. So really, that's the process with Farmers Academy. It's a 3 years. It's a 3-year course. We play out the whole training over 3 years, and it's done that way because we have a lot of coaching associated with it as well. We talked before about the lack of accountability in the farming space, and part of Farmers Academy is a significant amount of coaching, accountability coaching, which means that for the members of Farmers Academy that are going through the course with us, they are held accountable each month to the things that they are saying that they need to achieve their longer term vision, and so we bring accountability in place. So as well as the training and the upskilling, there's accountability coaching as well, which helps basically keep people in motion and get them moving towards their vision. And really, it takes several years for old habits to be replaced with new habits. And so we need that time frame to create new habits for farm business owners that are going to then take them forward. The whole thrust of Farmers Academy is to build resilient and highly skilled farm business owners that are not dependent on us. So unlike a majority of the consultants models that are around the place, a lot of consultants models work on keeping people welded to them. They build dependence on the consultant. We actually don't want to we want to build independence. We actually, there's nothing better than to see people leave the program with all the skills that they need to be able to go forward without actually having to tap us at all. They might seek out some opinion or advice from time to time, but certainly they don't need to tap us for the ongoing activities in their business because we've built an independent business owner. So that's really what it's about. The Take Control program was really designed as an introductory opportunity for people to just, I guess, put their foot in the water and see what it is that we offer in one segment of the whole Top Producers program, which is the program that underpins the Farmers Academy training process. But Take Control is really one of the core and foundational parts of business ownership. It really deals with the foundational skills that all business owners need. So it's basically it's how it runs through how to take control of yourself, your thinking, your mindset, your attitude towards yourself and business and life in general. It talks about or teaches you about taking control of your time. Most of us, or one of the common complaints, I suppose, in business is that people don't have enough time. They're working too many hours and they don't have enough time. And we all have the same amount of time. It's just that some people use it more efficiently than others. And so understanding how to take control of your time is really important. Taking control of your money, we've talked about this before, but it's so important. If you don't understand money in your farming business, then you are likely not to make good financial decisions and not ask the right questions. And then finally, take control of your team, which is so important. If you want to move to a business that can, from a self-managed, from a startup business which relies on you to a business that doesn't rely on you as much or at all, then you need to have team. And so skills around team, finding team and keeping team are really important. So really that Take Control online program is a really comprehensive, I guess, look into those four aspects, and that we go into significantly more depth in the full Farm Owners Academy program.
Yeah, Greg, thank you. And so it is a 5-module self-paced online program that is a really compelling world-class precursor to the mastermind program that is the 3-year. As you outline, you can take 12 weeks to do that, or you have access to all of that online learning content and our team over a 12-month period. So it does allow you to go about it methodically and thoroughly with your whole farming family and your whole farm team. One of the things I think is unique about what Farm Owners does, I could go and do an MBA or a business degree myself, and then I've got to come back and try and inspire that change within my family and within my farm team, and that would be very hard. But I think what's amazing about the way Farm Owners Academy and our program is set up, Greg, is that it's like doing an MBA or a really significant business program, but both generations and both brothers and the sister, everyone gets to go through the program together, and it's a significant way of bringing multiple families in farming businesses together and going about the same learning and the same strategic development journey.
Yeah, that's really important. And, we're so focused on bringing everybody that makes decisions, that's part of the decision-making team for a farming business together into the rooms when we do the Farm Owners Academy training, because it's a lot of the issues that occur in farming where you've got multiple people in ownership positions occurs because of poor communication or lack of shared vision or a number of things like that. So part of the process is to get everybody that's involved together, going through the training together, and then it brings up questions that opens a conversation around those areas that hopefully will lead to resolution and alignment and a shared vision going forward. And the power of a shared vision is unbelievable. I guess I've mentioned a number of times that our vision for what's turned out to be Farm Owners Academy was a shared vision between Dev and myself, and we've both been equally passionate about delivering on that vision over the years. And I can't emphasise enough how important having a shared vision is. And even if you're just a couple who run a farm, a husband and wife team, and the husband spends all of his time out in the paddock, and the wife is looking after children and at home, inevitably, the wife is still a 50% owner of that business, and has as much, I guess, right and as much requirement to understand what's going on with the business from its longer term strategic process and its financial management and all the rest of it, as the person who's doing the day-to-day farm work. So I really think that that bringing the team together and going through the modules and the training together is absolutely the best way to do it.
And so last calendar year, 2020, we invited 100 farming families into our Take Control program. We invited 200 farming families into our financial literacy training program, and we invited 75 farming families into our Platinum Mastermind program. And it's on the back of this podcast that we are inviting another 100 farming families into this year's Take Control program intake. And so it's new and improved, if you like. We've spent time making significant improvements to that over the last few months. It's normally priced at something like $5,000, but for the next 10 weeks, it's $3,500. And we're including 2 complimentary tickets to our 2-day intensive top producer program workshop for people that commit to that in the next 10 weeks. And so if that interests you, please jump onto our website. We'll include a link with this podcast to farmownersacademy.com/take control. There's a host of information there. You can reach out to our team with any questions. But if what has been touched on today is of interest to you and you're keen to make that first significant step in reviewing your skill set around entrepreneurship and business leadership, I do believe that this is a really significant short course, and it is a world-class program delivered by Andrew Roberts, who is truly a world-class business coach. And we'd love to have you committing to that over the next 10 weeks, making it part of your learning journey, and to inviting you to be part of the Farm Owners Academy community, which is significant and quite incredible and growing. So, Greg, thank you so much for that. I finish these podcasts often with 2 questions, and if you'd humour me, I'm keen to throw them at you as well.
Sure.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
It's an interesting one, Jeremy, but I think, over all of the years of advice I've been given, I come back to some advice that was given to me by my father at a very early age, and that is that knowledge is very light to carry around. And so what he's meaning by that is that, is that you can never learn too much, that you can never spend too much time on incremental knowledge in whatever it is that interests you and whatever it is that's necessary for you to generate the sort of life that you want to generate. Because you may not use the knowledge now, but it's amazing when you've got that knowledge. It's amazing when circumstances might arise that you can actually pull it out and start using it. So incredible. And in a lot of cases, I've seen people, and this has been the case for me, while I was going through the mastermind program we talked about earlier, things didn't change a lot in our business. It was after we finished, and then we'd gone through the due diligence process and actually started to implement the changes that we identified that we could put in place. That's when everything started to happen. So it's learning, it's taking the learning and then applying it in the given set of circumstances where the power comes out. So that would be the best piece of advice I've ever been given, for sure.
Magic. Thank you. Last question. What would you say to a younger you?
Yeah, look, fantastic. And I say this as well to my kids. And I think in life, the most important trait that you can have in life is persistence. So I think that, whatever you decide to do in life, if you have a compelling vision for the future or a compelling goal that you want to get to, then just get started and persist. It's just amazing what happens when you persist. Too many people give up too early, give up too quickly. Persistence, I think, is the number one thing. If you can teach your kids anything in life, teach them to be persistent. I just think it's such an important attribute to have in your character. So that was what I'd say to a younger me if I was going to go back. Get started on something, and when you get started on it, persist.
Perfect, Greg. What a way to finish. Greg, thank you for we go pretty hard in this project, and we're very focused on clients. I really do appreciate you taking the time to perhaps stop and reflect with me on your career and your father's entrepreneurial career, and I guess what it was that inspired you to make Farm Owners Academy a compelling and really important project for our industry. And thank you for, I guess, the explanation as to how that came to be and your reflections around that.
You're very welcome, Jeremy, and thanks everybody for listening. I hope there's been some things in there that are interesting to you and that you can take home and think about for your own businesses. But it's been a wonderful journey, and I think hopefully it'll go for a little while yet, health permitting. So,
absolutely, Greg, you're not going anywhere. Ladies and gents, thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this conversation just as compelling as I have, and perhaps as a rounding out reflection from me. I've heard it said that our success is the result of the books we read and the people we choose to hang out with. I feel privileged that I get to have Deb and Greg as mentors to me. And so I guess my question to you in finishing is, who do you have around you as mentors that can support and be part of your journey? I think having mentors like Greg and Deb around you is just the other really critical piece in the puzzle to success in business and entrepreneurship. So enjoy your next few weeks. I've got some cracking podcasts ahead around ag tech and some other exciting topics. So I look forward to checking in with you again in coming weeks. to share those with you. Take care, guys. Thank you, and bye for now.